Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the place where we dismantle overwhelming information stacks and deliver the essential insights right to your mental doorstep.
Today, we're wading into a topic that it really challenges one of the most pervasive, just unquestioned habits of modern life.
And that's the compulsive daily consumption of news.
Exactly. And we're not just, analyzing a habit today. We're dissecting a radical, completely unapologetic manifesto against it.
So what's our mission here? What do we try to figure out for you, the listener?
Right. Our mission is critical, especially if you're an insightful learner. We're going to analyze arguments, really well-supported ones, that suggest daily news isn't just a waste of time.
It's worse than that.
It's actually detrimental. We're talking damage to your mental health, your decision-making, your ability to think deeply. We're looking for that efficient path to being truly well-informed, not just superficially busy.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The core thesis that drives this entire thing is, well, it's blunt. It uses a comparison that's just designed to shock you out of complacency.
It really is. Our source argues that news is to the mind what sugar is to the body.
Appetizing, easily digestible.
And extremely damaging. That analogy just perfectly captures the problem, doesn't it? News gives you these easily palatable little tidbits.
With a quick hit.
It is. It's an immediate, high-speed spike of low-grade information, often packaged with emotional triggers, but it offers zero, lasting nutritional value for genuine knowledge. It fails to satisfy that deeper hunger for context and understanding.
And the author, Rolf Dobelli, he didn't just tuck this away in some academic journal. There's this incredible anecdote right at the start of the book that, it's the ultimate hook. It just shows the sheer audacity of the argument.
Absolutely. We're talking about this extraordinary moment in April 2013. He gets invited to address the staff at The Guardian.
One of the world's most respected newspapers.
Right, and he was initially supposed to talk about his other work, but the editor-in-chief, Alan Rusbridger, he insisted. He said, no, talk about this new controversial piece you just posted online.
So picture this. He's standing there in front of, 50 seasoned journalists, the intellectual elite of the news world.
And he looks out at this room of people who have dedicated their lives to producing the news, and he tells them essentially to stop. He argues that the very product they're creating is actually harmful. He concludes by saying, let's be honest, what you're doing here, ladies and gentlemen, is basically entertainment.
Wow. I can only imagine the silence in that room.
It was described as absolute, just total silence. But what happened next is the real paradox here.
Rusbridger, the editor, instead of, throwing him out.
He immediately asks for the arguments to be published in the newspaper itself.
That's incredible.
And 4 hours later, an abridged version called News is Bad for You is up on the Guardian website. It gets 450 comments, the max the site allowed, and becomes one of the most read articles of the year.
So the producers of the news inadvertently amplified a manifesto against their own existence.
Yeah.
That's a meta-level critique right there.
It is. And that paradox really sets the stage for our entire deep dive today. We're going to analyze his arguments, why news is profoundly irrelevant, why it's a colossal time sink.
And we'll get into the cognitive hazards too, right? How it reinforces our biases and actually damages our brain's ability to think deeply.
Exactly. And then most importantly, we'll explore the solutions, the concrete steps like radical abstinence, the soft option, and even this fascinating idea of a news lunch.
It sounds like a required detox plan if you're serious about efficient learning. So let's start at the beginning. How did this habit become such an entrenched addiction in the first place?
Well, the author details his own background as a self-proclaimed newsaholic, which I think grounds the argument for a lot of us. He talks about growing up in a middle-class home in the 1970s where news was a ritual.
It was part of the structure of the day.
A deeply embedded ritual. He describes it perfectly. The newspaper dropping into the letterbox at 6:30 a.m., the radio bulletins at 7:00 and 12:30, and then the evening TV news, Tagesschau, at 7:30 p.m. sharp.
It wasn't constant noise like today. It was rhythmic.
Almost comforting. But even within that routine, he started to notice something. Something that hinted at the manufactured nature of it all.
What was that?
He was reading his local paper and realized that the physical thickness of the paper and its structure, 1 page foreign, 1 financial, 2 pages local, it never changed.
Regardless of what was actually happening in the world.
Exactly. So the physical container, the newspaper itself, dictated the volume of content. If a huge story broke, great, it filled the space. But if nothing much happened...
They had to inflate minor events to fill the pages.
Precisely. They had to invent importance daily. The delivery mechanism created the demand. And that's a crucial structural weakness right there.
And for a long time, he was all in on this.
Yeah.
He describes this voracious reader phase.
Oh, yeah. Spending entire Saturdays in the library, devouring every newspaper, feeling like this informed, high-flying intellectual who was connected to the world that really mattered.
That feeling of being in the know is so powerful, it's addictive.
It is. But then, of course, the addiction just escalated dramatically with technology. The internet basically removed the physical constraints of the printed page.
And suddenly information wasn't just immediate, it was free.
And everywhere. He remembers his first digital addiction cue was the point-cast screensaver. It turned his monitor into this perpetually scrolling stream of headlines.
Like having Times Square on your desk, 204/7.
And once push notifications and RSS feeds and news podcasts came along, the habit just became completely untenable. The structured ritual of the 70s was gone, replaced by the constant, aggressive ping of a notification. You were never really finished reading the news.
There was no off switch.
None. And the painful realization came years later. After tens of thousands of hours consuming news, he concluded he didn't understand the world any better, and he certainly wasn't making better decisions in his own life.
That's the real threshold moment, isn't it? When the cost-benefit analysis just completely flips.
It is. He even compares news to alcohol and finds news to be far more dangerous.
More dangerous, how?
Well, with alcohol, there are obstacles. You need money, you need time, you have to make an effort to get it. News, though, has what he calls negative obstacles.
Negative obstacles. What does that mean?
It means it's free, it's everywhere, and this is the critical part. It sidles automatically into your brain. It requires zero effort to acquire, and society praises you for consuming it. It makes it deeply insidious. All the friction is gone.
So the whole system is basically designed for inescapable addiction.
Which is why the only solution he found was so radical. In 2010, he went cold turkey.
Just cut it all off.
Canceled all subscriptions, banned all exposure, changed his digital habits completely. And the result, he says, was a dramatic, improved quality of life, clearer thinking, more valuable insights, and vastly more time.
And that reclaimed time. That's the key currency we need to focus on next. If news is such a poor investment, let's start quantifying the actual cost.
Okay. When we talk about irrelevance, the scale of it is just staggering. Our source suggests the average, highly engaged person has probably consumed around 20,000 news items in the last year.
60 a day. That feels conservative, actually.
It does. And here's the core, brutal challenge he poses to you, the listener. Try right now to name a single one of those 20,000 pieces of news that led you to make a better decision about your life, your career, your well-being.
I have to admit, I'm drawing a blank. The critical decisions in my life, who I married, my career path, where I invest my energy, they were all driven by deep reading, long-term trends, personal reflection. Not a headline from 3 weeks ago.
Exactly. The source argues very few examples exist. It's a shoddy hit rate. At best, news is momentary entertainment. It rarely offers actionable intelligence for the things that truly shape your life.
Okay, but let me push back a little here. What about certain professions? High finance, political analysis. Isn't daily real-time news absolutely essential for them? If you're a trader, you have to be on top of it.
That's a critical distinction, and the Manifesto does account for it. What those professionals are reading usually isn't news in the way Dobelli means it. It's specialized, essential data streams, market indicators. It's targeted intelligence that falls firmly within their circle of competence.
Which we'll get to later.
Right. The problem is the 99% of general news that provides no actionable value to the rest of us.
And it's not just that most of it is useless, it's that you can't prejudge its value. You have to read the headline, often the whole article, just to realize that it was, in fact, worthless.
You're forced to sample the whole buffet, constantly wasting time just on the faint hope of finding one little nugget of gold. And what's really interesting is this inverse relationship he suggests.
The bigger the fanfare, the smaller the relevance.
The greater the fanfare in the news, the smaller its actual long-term relevance. And we have a perfect historical example of this.
Right, the Mosaic browser.
Think about November 11th, 1993. The first graphical internet browser, Mosaic version 1.0, was released. I mean, arguably one of the single most influential inventions of the late 20th century. It completely reshaped global commerce, communication, everything.
And yet, it failed to make the lead stories on German television that day.
Nope. The top stories were about party funding reform, a fracture within the Catholic Church, a meeting between Bill Clinton and the Israeli Prime Minister.
Immediate, short-term political dramas that felt urgent but mattered very little 6 months later.
It just shows that journalists, driven by spectacle, demonstrably lack a sense of what's truly relevant. They miss the massive, slow-moving generators of change in favor of all that transient noise.
Okay, if that irrelevance argument doesn't fully persuade you, there's this brilliant thought experiment he uses to prove the point with scale.
This is a great one. Imagine, hypothetically, that the Earth had twice the diameter. That means 4 times the surface area, 4 times the people.
So your immediate life might feel the same, but the volume of important news would increase fourfold.
Which means if you currently spend, say, 90 minutes a day trying to stay informed, you'd now need 6 hours a day just to maintain that same level of informed status.
And nobody's going to do that. It's impossible.
It's impossible. So you would be forced to limit your consumption to just a quarter of the so-called crucial news. You'd have to consciously decide to ignore 75% of it just to function.
And the takeaway is sharp. If you're willing to do that in a hypothetical scenario, why not apply that same limitation in real life? The conclusion is that no news is so important you can't live without it.
Right. And if something truly world-altering happens, a major war, a pandemic, a catastrophic collapse, he assures us it will leak out and find you. You'll hear about it from friends, from family, from your specialized sources.
Okay, so let's quantify the actual time we're wasting, because it's more than just the minutes spent reading. The distraction factor is immense.
Hugely. The Pew Research Center estimates active consumption is somewhere between 58 and 96 minutes a day. But that's only half the story. You have to account for the switching cost.
The switching cost. This is fascinating. It's all that invisible wasted time. Explain that for us.
Okay, think of your attention like a complex computer program running. When you switch from writing a complicated report to checking a headline, you force your brain to shut down that demanding process and start a trivial one.
And even if checking the news only takes 20 seconds.
The mental reboot to get back up to speed on the complex task takes another 2 or 3 minutes. That's the switching cost.
It's like trying to relaunch your mental hard drive every time the doorbell rings. If you do that 20 or 30 times a day, those minutes add up fast.
They absolutely do. And then you add in the time you lose just brooding on some sensational story you can't get out of your head, and the total loss is easily 90 minutes a day.
An hour and a half.
Over a year, that equates to reclaiming a full month, nearly 550 hours.
Yeah.
Your year suddenly has 12 productive months, not 11.
That is a powerful thought. A whole month gained just by opting out of low-value information. But the cost goes beyond the individual. Our source calculates the extreme societal cost of mass attention.
This calculation is just devastating. He looks at the 2008 Mumbai terrorist attacks, a localized tragedy, of course, for the victims, but the global consumption of news about it was an attention disaster.
How so?
Well, if just 1 billion people focused their attention on that tragedy for a single hour, reading, watching, discussing, that's 1 billion hours of distraction.
And in terms of global productivity and economic value?
That's equivalent to wasting 2,000 human lives. More than 10 times the number of people actually killed in the attack. That number is just staggering.
It really is. It reveals this profound truth that attention, not information, is the scarce resource today.
And the news industry is incredibly irresponsible with it. By demanding and focusing that global attention on immediate crises, they unwittingly become economic accomplices to the chaos.
So we pay this exorbitant price in time and energy for information that is, at best, useless, and at worst, actively harmful because it damages our cognitive function. Let's delve into that harm now.
Right. The inherent problem starts with how the news selects its material, and it's driven by our evolutionary biology. Our brains are predisposed to overreact to visible, scandalous, shocking, rapidly changing stimuli.
If it moves, if it bleeds, it gets our attention.
While complex, slowly developing abstract information, the stuff that actually generates long-term societal change, is systematically ignored because it lacks immediate spectacle. The news media then just exploits this cognitive distortion.
The example of the collapsing bridge is perfect. What does the news focus on?
The crumpled car, the profile of the driver, the grief of the family. It's an easy, personal, emotional tragedy.
But what's truly relevant to you, the learner, the citizen? It's the bridge itself, its structural stability, the engineering firm, whether similar bridges exist in your state.
That's the complex data that prevents future harm, but the news reports on the car because it's visibly horrible and cheap to produce. And this leads to a completely skewed risk assessment for all of us.
We internalize a false sense of what's actually dangerous. Terrorism, plane crashes, shark attacks. They're amplified because they're dramatic.
Meanwhile, massive, slow-burning risks like the quiet accumulation of government debt or chronic stress or ocean acidification, they get systematically downplayed. The news gives us a deeply unrealistic map of global threats.
And this tendency to amplify drama leads directly into how news reinforces our built-in cognitive shortcuts. Let's start with confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias is the big intellectual trap. It's our tendency to automatically block out clues that contradict our favorite opinions and be oversensitive to information that confirms what we already believe.
We all do it. It's just baked into human nature.
And the news, rather than challenging us, acts as a continuous supply chain for our pre-existing mental prisons. The more news you consume, the more frequently you find information that confirms what you already think.
It just cements false opinions. It turns news into an accomplice for ideology, which polarizes the public.
If you're already convinced of X, the news cycle guarantees you'll find a story every hour that validates X, making you resistant to any conflicting data. It just narrows your worldview.
So if the news landscape is that polarized, doesn't consuming it make you actively worse informed than consuming nothing at all?
Precisely. At least a blank slate allows for true, open-minded research. Ideology is described as self-built mental prisons, and the news just gives everyone continuous material to reinforce the walls of their specific prison.
Okay, next up is hindsight bias. This is that dangerous illusion that past crises were perfectly predictable after the fact.
And news amplifies this by brutally simplifying complex events. We crave a simple narrative. Take the 2008 financial crisis. It was this poisonous cocktail of hundreds of interconnected factors.
Global euphoria, low interest rates, synthetic securities, criminal behavior by rating agencies.
Right. But the news simplified the cause down to one or two things. The greedy banker, the subprime borrower, they call it an analysis, but it's really just a convenient, simplified anecdote.
This false simplicity then convinces us that the future is easy to understand and therefore predictable.
Which reduces the quality of our decision-making. We miss the nuance. We start to believe we would have seen it coming. A reporter announcing, the market fell today because of X is often just providing a convenient lie because the true causes are too numerous and intertwined.
And finally, let's talk about availability bias, using whatever is emotionally and immediately accessible in our minds as the basis for a decision.
We rely on the information that's immediately at hand. And news, especially emotional imagery and shocking video clips, just jostles its way to the forefront of our minds. It occupies the top drawers of our mental filing cabinet.
So we risk using irrelevant news as the basis for major decisions. The classic example is hearing about a plane crash and then avoiding an important business flight.
Even though the risk of driving to the airport is statistically much, much higher. But that visual image is just too available, too compelling.
And journalists are inherently focused on what has happened, not what has been prevented.
Exactly. We hear about the fires, but never about the judicious behavior that prevented a fire. The person who successfully lobbied to get bulletproof cockpit doors installed before 9/11 would never be in the news because prevention is invisible. It's an absence of news.
So by allowing journalists who are stressed, short on time, and prone to these same biases to set our mental agenda, we're surrendering far too much power over our own rational decision-making.
But the cognitive damage doesn't stop there. It fundamentally inhibits our ability to even think deeply in the first place.
Right, this is where we need to address the physical cost of news consumption on our brains. Concentration requires uninterrupted time, and the torrent of news just makes you a shallow thinker.
Studies show that new information needs at least 10 minutes of uninterrupted processing time to sink into our long-term memory. The constant switching and interruption from news guarantees we're always operating in that short-term memory loop.
And online news is even worse, right? Because of hyperlinks.
Yes. Studies show comprehension actually decreases with the number of hyperlinks because your brain has to constantly decide whether to click.
It creates this perpetual cognitive noise.
It's like having a doorbell ringing inside your head while you're trying to read a complex essay.
And crucially, this isn't just a habit. It's a biological problem tied to neuronal plasticity. News physically rewires our brains.
They explain that.
Well, plasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself. It's a muscle that adapts to what you feed it. News consumption encourages the growth of neuronal circuits adapted for multitasking, context switching, and surface-level processing.
The circuit's designed for breadth.
While the circuits necessary for deep reading, sustained absorption, and slow original thought, the circuits for depth, They atrophy from disuse.
The London cab driver study is the perfect example of this.
It is. McGuire and her team found that cab drivers who mastered the layout of 25,000 streets, developed significantly more nerve cells in the hippocampus, the part of the brain for spatial memory.
But there was a trade-off, a big one. This high-level learning in one area came at the expense of others. The cab drivers were measurably worse at noticing new geometric drawings. The brain optimizes for what you feed it.
So the outcome for news junkies is a demonstrable loss of the ability for deep reading. They find that after 4 or 5 pages, they get tired.
Because the physical structure of their brain is literally less optimized for sustained attention. As the scientist Michael Merzenich puts it, we are training our brains to pay attention to the crap.
And we can't forget the energy cost of this, the ego depletion. If our brains are constantly making these micro decisions, we lose the willpower for important work.
Ego depletion is the idea that willpower is a finite resource, like a phone battery. Every micro decision to click or not to click, to read or ignore, drains that battery. And that leaves less cognitive fuel for the things that actually matter.
So the only rational strategy, given the high switching cost, the atrophy of deep thought circuits, and the continuous draining of willpower, is to avoid the whole attention battleground entirely.
And beyond the personal damage, the news media perpetuates anxiety and artificial hierarchies in society. Let's talk about status anxiety.
Right. As social mammals, we are deeply invested in hierarchy. It's fundamental to our psychology.
It is. Sir Michael Marmot's work confirmed that low status is linked to higher illness and earlier death. It's a deep-seated biological mechanism.
And the news acts like a brutal magnifying glass for this, amplifying the hierarchy by disproportionately reporting on the beautiful, the successful, the ridiculously wealthy.
All the Forbes lists, the Manager of the Year features endless celebrity coverage. It's a constant, unavoidable exposure to the pinnacle of human achievement.
Which floods our bodies with harmful stress hormones. And psychologically, the net effect is overwhelmingly negative.
Because of the rule that bad counts for twice as much as good. Comparing ourselves to a Bill Gates or Charlize Theron makes us feel twice as bad as comparing ourselves to a loser makes us feel good.
And news consumption expands our pool of competitors from our immediate village to the entire world. It's a guaranteed mechanism for anxiety generation.
Compounding this is the issue of fake fame. The news has severed the historical link between renown and real achievement.
Historically, fame was tied directly to competence or power. Great artists, philosophers, inventors.
But the news industry, needing constant spectacle, severed that bond. Now, celebrities. People famous for reasons utterly irrelevant to societal progress flood the media. They're famous for being famous.
And this actively crowds out genuinely valuable achievements. You contrast that with someone like Donald Henderson.
Henderson led the WHO team that successfully wiped out smallpox. I mean, one of medicine's greatest triumphs, saving millions of lives.
And his name appeared almost nowhere.
Because he only offered achievement, not spectacle or a weird hairdo. So if you consume news, you don't just risk losing the battle with fake news, you guarantee you lose the battle with fake fame.
And that cognitive space is increasingly being colonized by deliberate manipulation.
No, manipulation is big business. The numbers are shocking. For every single reporter in the U.S., there are more than 4 PR specialists working to get them to write exactly what their bosses want.
The global PR industry generates between $15 and $30 billion annually.
Companies wouldn't pay those dizzying sums if the manipulation wasn't highly effective.
And we have powerful historical examples of this, like the lead-up to the 1991 Gulf War.
The infamous Nayyirah testimony. A young Kuwaiti girl testified before Congress claiming Iraqi soldiers were murdering babies by pulling them from incubators.
It was an emotionally charged, graphic story that was broadcast everywhere. It outraged the public and helped swing the vote in favor of intervention.
And it was later exposed as part of a successful propaganda campaign run by a major PR firm. If the media can be manipulated on issues of war and peace, what chance do we have with daily commercially driven stories?
And this threat is just accelerating exponentially with technology.
Yeah.
The looming threat.
Yes, trend 4 in the manifesto. AI will soon generate text, images, and videos indistinguishable from real news, perfectly tailored to hook our emotions. This fake news will be more appealing than reality.
Created purely to attract attention and drain data or money.
And abstaining is the only reliable defense, especially since established news organizations are already blurring the lines with advertorials and native advertising. When you can't tell what's real and what's paid for, the whole system is compromised.
Finally, the manifesto draws this harsh, chilling connection between news consumption and the success of terrorism.
The central argument, drawing on thinkers like Yuval Noah Harari, is that terrorism relies entirely on the news media for its power. The true weapon isn't the bomb.
It's the fear and mass distraction triggered by the bomb, amplified globally by publicity.
Terrorists are rational actors. They achieve their political goals by sowing fear and chaos, and that requires publicity. The actual threat of terrorism is statistically minuscule compared to, say, traffic accidents, but the perceived threat is immense because of the media coverage.
So if there were no press?
The bomb would explode, windows would shatter, and the event would fizzle out. Terrorists would achieve nothing strategically because their fear-inducing message wouldn't propagate.
But isn't the role of the press to report on visible tragedies? If we ignore it, aren't we just burying our heads in the sand?
The distinction is vital. We shouldn't ignore the reality of the event, but we must deny the terrorists the attention they crave. By consuming, sharing, and obsessing over news of terror, you, the listener, are unintentionally supporting the phenomenon.
That's a harsh conclusion. But it leads us directly to the required change in behavior. If news is a cognitive poison, we need a viable implementation plan.
Right. If abstinence is the goal, we need a practical plan. And the first step is establishing your circle of competence.
This is Warren Buffett's concept. Know your circle of competence and stick within it. The size of that circle is not very important. Knowing its boundaries, however, is vital.
Professional and intellectual success is found in a niche. The rule is simple. All information matching your niche is valuable. Everything outside is best ignored.
So the circle of competence acts like a scalpel to slice off 99% of media input.
Your brain is a limited resource. Cramming it with junk leaves less room for high-value information. If you consistently organize your life around this principle, the irrelevance of the daily news cycle just becomes self-evident.
Okay, now for the core action plan. The radical 30-day plan. This is the cold turkey approach.
It requires immediate, drastic steps. Delete all news apps, change your homepage to a blank page, sell the TV, fill travel time with books, make it physically and digitally difficult to access news.
The challenge here is entirely psychological. You have to anticipate it. The first week is the hardest.
Expect nervousness, isolation, constant temptation. You'll feel itchy like you've lost a limb, but the goal is just to stick it out for 30 days.
And the reward?
By then, you should experience initial calm. You'll realize you have vast amounts of reclaimed time, your concentration improves, and you'll discover you missed nothing relevant. Truly significant events will still reach you.
And we use that reclaimed time, that full productive month per year, for what?
For depth. For books, long-form articles by genuine experts in your field, high-value online courses. Or you could even emulate Bill Gates's Think Week, a full week off the grid with just books and notepaper for pure, focused thought.
But if radical abstinence feels too overwhelming, there is a soft option.
Right. The soft option is you avoid all daily and streamed news. Instead, you're allowed to read one weekly paper or magazine, and only in print.
Why the rigid requirement for print?
To avoid the hyperlink whirlpool, it constantly costs attention and willpower. Print is a contained experience. It has a beginning and an end. Read it in one 60-minute sitting, then get rid of it.
And there's an intermediate step, too, reading an edition that's at least a month old.
That's a genius maneuver. The major topics are still covered, but all the sensationalism and emotional hysteria have completely dissipated. It builds your confidence that you can avoid the immediate whirlpool without missing what mattered.
But the author warns that this soft route is more dangerous because the siren call to news is still audible.
Right. If you relapse, the advice is the same as for any addiction. Just start again immediately with a zero-tolerance policy.
Okay, moving beyond personal consumption, the Manifesto offers this fascinating democratic alternative, the news lunch.
This is great. It transforms the mundane lunch break into a high-quality intellectual and social experience.
The format is highly structured, right? 2 crisp 15-minute presentations.
Talk 1 is from a journalist focusing intensely on their one most important story, providing context and nuance, not just the headline.
And Talk 2 is from a scholar or an expert presenting on an abstract, slow-burning, high-value issue that would never make the news.
The result is intelligent conversation, new connections, and a rich experience. It shifts the focus from crisis coping to positive intellectual endeavor.
We've seen the evidence now. The personal gains of abstinence are clearer thinking, lower anxiety, better decisions, and a profound inner peace. Knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied.
And our source connects news abstinence directly to the formation of wisdom itself. Consuming news is this frantic journey that actively prevents wisdom. Seneca said it 2,000 years ago. You become what you give your attention to.
Wisdom requires choosing a few master thinkers and digesting their works deeply. News is like endless, shallow foreign travel. You get many acquaintances, many facts, but no deep friends, no sustained understanding.
And to drive this point home, we have one final provocative challenge for you, the listener, the 10-year test.
We really encourage you to physically do this. Take a piece of paper, divide it into 10 columns for the last 10 years. In the top half, list the most important global news reports you can recall without Googling.
And in the bottom half, listed the major developments in your own life, the things that truly mattered. Marriage, illness, career changes, the birth of a child.
Now, draw lines. Connect the global news reports in the top half to the major developments in your own life in the bottom half.
What do you see? Or rather, what do you not see? The stark lack of connection proves the fundamental irrelevance of the global news cycle to your actual lived reality. They are two separate, non-overlapping universes.
And that realization is the ultimate freedom. So we'll leave you with this. Given that you now know that 99% of news is outside your circle of control and irrelevant to your success, what complex, difficult, high-value skill could you start mastering today? Use that cumulative time and restored concentration you just gained from being news-free.
Focus on the knowledge that compounds, not the sugar that spikes. That is the true path to being genuinely well-informed.